So my name is English Sall, as Mariel said, and for the past few semesters, I've been working under the guidance of Dr. Lucas Mazur towards the completion of my internship project. This project was focused on gleaning a better understanding of the relationship between psychological safety and storytelling. This research aims to uncover the linkages between storytelling, psychological safety, and voice. A scoping review was conducted and over 9 databases were searched, resulting in 5,491 documents that were initially retrieved and eventually scoped to 20 intervention studies and 6 reviews, totaling 26 documents that were evaluated and used as the basis of this work. There's some support to indicate the relationship between storytelling, psychological safety, and voice. However, there is more research and study needed to understand how storytelling might be used to give rise to psychological safety and promote voice behavior. So this scoping review aimed to outline and summarize the studies that depict how storytelling and narrative are linked to psychological safety and explore if and how they are used to give rise to psychological safety within organizations and teams. Specifically considering how the method of storytelling could be used to create and sustain psychological safety towards, for example, error reporting and engagement with quality improvement efforts. So why is psychological safety important? Well, psychological safety has been touted as an important cultural pillar in high-functioning teams and productive organizations for decades. Psychological safety implies that there is no fear or reservation within the human interaction. Instead, there's respect, comfort, no fear of judgment or retribution when engaging with fellow team members and others within an organization. It has been noted to help facilitate trust and vulnerability within teams and organizations and can lead to more trusting and higher performing teams. Stories are the water we swim in. I love this quote by David Foster Wallace because it really articulates both the importance and the ambiguity of what storytelling is. Storytelling has also been an impactful element in creating and sustaining workplace culture and implementing psychological safety. Storytelling is an ambiguous construct to define concretely and can imply a range of styles, tactics, and motives. According to the National Storytelling Network, the definition of storytelling is the interactive art of using words and actions to reveal the elements and images of a story, while encouraging the listener's imagination. So we created a protocol for this scoping review and submitted it to Prospero. We also defined inclusion and exclusion criteria for the scoping review. Our inclusion criteria was robust and allowed us to really cover a wide range of literature. One of the main reasons for this is because we knew that the construct of storytelling might not be present by name in some of the literature, but we wanted to explore a lot of domains that could possibly have storytelling as an intervention or measure, even if it wasn't stated explicitly in the manuscript. We were really lucky to be able to consult with 2 subject matter experts on storytelling throughout this work. As you see here, Matt Lewis and Brian Sturham. Both Matt and Brian offered unique and meaningful insights into this work, as well as feedback on our search processes and hypothesized models. The review of the literature was fairly extensive. We wanted to cast a wide net to better understand how psychological safety was implemented and measured across many disciplines, as well as be able to capture as many instances, both covert and overt, of storytelling as possible. As you can see, there was a lot of research terms included with the aim to really bring in as diverse a sample as possible. So again, a total of 5,491 documents were aggregated based on the search terms. The results of the abstract screening resulted in 44 documents for full text review, and 26 ended up being chosen for inclusion in the overall study. Those contained 20 intervention articles and 6 reviews. In the process of data extraction, we realized that it was important to disentangle the data presented in the reviews and the intervention documents. So there were 2 different extraction processes created to address each type of manuscript. We extracted the data based on key elements around storytelling, psychological safety, and voice. And as you see here, this included definitions, measures, and interventions surrounding these constructs. So once the data extraction and full text review was completed, again, there was 26 articles that we extracted for final review, 20 intervention articles and 6 review articles. And then we used these articles to begin to create a hypothesized model of how these constructs linked together. So what you're looking at here is the initial hypothesized model that we have established, and it shows the linkages between storytelling, psychological safety, and voice. One of the most interesting findings that came out during our study is the role of voice in this model. I think initially we were considering voice and storytelling to be 2 sides of the same coin and could be measured in a similar way. However, what became clear in our research and in talking to our experts is that voice is really a one-sided individual action, and storytelling is a relational activity. And while they're both vital styles of communication and can lead to similar outcomes, they are in fact different constructs and measured and executed on differently. So really what this model is saying here is that storytelling is a process that gives rise to psychological safety. Psychological safety in turn sustains the process of storytelling, and psychological safety also encourages voice behavior, which then voice propels and or promotes storytelling. So here is just a snippet of the final psychological safety table that we created based on the final intervention documents. We created 2 tables that noted the manuscripts that had an emphasis on psychological safety and one that had an emphasis on storytelling. So here's the snippet of the storytelling table. One of the things that was really tricky and interesting in this work is really this kind of concept of reading between the lines of the manuscripts to pick apart how storytelling might have been used, even if the term storytelling wasn't stated directly in the manuscript. So for example, a few of the manuscripts we looked at measured something like qualitative reflections. And upon further investigation, it was clear that these reflections from participants could actually be considered a form of storytelling from the participant. So as the age-old adage goes, the more you know, the more you don't know. And it became clear to us that this was not as simple of a model that I first showed you. There was much more to these constructs and how they linked together. As you see here, just within these 3 constructs alone, we've established questions that bear further research. For example, it became clear that an important consideration from the perspective of storytelling was who was in fact telling the story. For psychological safety, there also needs to be further investigation into the individual versus team level, and also considerations with respect to trust. Finally, the motivation behind voice is an area that also warrants further explanation as well. So I'm about to show you a few other models that we're looking at and iterating on based on this initial research. And here you see, for example, a possible place where trust as a construct could fit into this model. Also diving deeper on safety, culture, and learning from failures, 2 constructs that really initially inspired this research, and seeing the effect on team performance. And another example, looking at the effect of leaders and leadership on this model. Again, considering who is telling the story and to whom and for what purpose is a question that rose to the top of our list for further exploration. So as you can see, there's more work to be done in this space. But overall, this research offered some support for these initial linkages between storytelling, psychological safety, and voice. Linking storytelling to the creation and maintenance of psychological safety could be extremely additive to organizational culture, as well as promoting risk-taking behaviors. It's important to consider where the story is coming from, what modality it's being told in, who is telling it, and for what purpose. It will be important to uncover the constructs that make storytelling a useful intervention tool, like trust, leadership, and safety culture. So for next steps, we still have further investigation to do on some of these constructs, and we'll finalize the manuscript detailing these findings and making clear recommendations for future research based on the final models. So in conclusion, as you've seen, there's some evidence to suggest that storytelling could be a useful tool in creating and sustaining psychological safety and encouraging voice. The use of storytelling to encourage voice through psychological safety is an important area for further study. There are other constructs to consider as this model becomes more researched and robust, like leadership, safety, and trust. And overall, by starting to define these linkages between storytelling, psychological safety, and voice, there will be important impacts on how teams and organizations can sustain cultures and climates that are not only psychologically safe, but promote risk-taking behaviors and result in cultures of safety and high performance. So thank you all so much for taking the time to hear about this work, and I'm happy to take any questions.